We Have Issues is a weekly podcast full of reviews of comics and oversharing. We use grown-up language to make very childish jokes. You can find the show at wehaveissues.net, as well as anywhere else where average to not too bad podcasts can be found. John's timid, it's just that's his voice. His voice sounds like that.
Like what?
Louder. When you get excited. And the thing is, we always get to a point where we get onto us, we veer towards a subject. And I think you've done one with Jon and one with James, haven't you? We get towards a subject and I always say, well, there's something we want to kind of say about this, but I know that if I get Jon onto it, we're not going home anytime soon.
Topics include Transformers, Superman,
and it was Transformers when we lasted when the three of us were all together, and it was good because it's interesting. But then you get so excited, and it's lovely. There was a
podcast that you and I did, and it was at your house. It was just you and me, and I remember somehow I started talking about a new issue of Transformers that had come out, and it turned into, effectively, we just ended up railroading the whole thing for half an hour of discussion about the history of the British Transformers comics.
So now that we've done that...
That's it.
No, don't worry, I'm not going to discuss
it.
It's done.
No transforming robots
I'm
anywhere
happy.
in sight.
The problem is Jon and I are both a bit like that. So if I'm not paying attention and things get out of control, that will always happen. A couple of times in fact, I think that was one of the ones where Jon literally had one comic because he didn't know he was going to be recording it until the last minute, and I had hardly anything, and I was thinking, well, this is just going to be like a 10-minute conversation. I think it was like the longest one.
It was about a 90-minute podcast.
Yeah. I did the same thing on. There was a friend of mine. Stacey Taylor does a podcast called Stacey's Pop Culture Parlour, and she gets a different person on each episode, and they talk about all sorts of different stuff. And she did a 24-hour one, and I had something like the midnight till 1 a.m. stretch, and I wasn't sure how it'd go because obviously I felt like, well, there were going to have been loads of really charming, interesting people up till this point, and they're going to be knackered, and then I'm going to come along with my monotone voice. And so for the first 20 minutes, my memory of it while it was going on was first 20 minutes, I was like, actually, we're having a nice time. I'm making them laugh, and like they're clearly tired, so it's good. I'm buoying them up. We're having a nice conversation. There's lots of toing and throwing. And so for the second half of my hour, I kind of relaxed and thought, yeah, this is going great. And I listened back to it, and it was all great. I was actually quite pleased up until the point where somehow we got onto the subject of the X-Men, the most recent X-Men movie. And then it's basically 20 minutes of me just going, rah, 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 ha, ha, rah, rah, and them going, yeah. And I thought, my memory of it was, we were having a lovely toing and froing. I was saying something, they were saying something back. No, they were literally just laughing politely for a whole 20 minutes.
It's almost
that's embarrassing.
That's like a good metaphor for my life, really.
Yeah. Oh man. Don't worry, it gets better, Jessie.
No, I think we discussed 2 days ago that it doesn't get better. You just learn to deal with it. It doesn't get better, kids.
Listener and Jon, because he wasn't there. I'm Nick. You just heard Jessie.
Hello.
And yesterday we bumped into each other and we had a coffee, and I forgot that I was talking to someone who is just like at the beginning of the point where they're going to be entering the full grown world without a safety net sort of thing. And I forgot that it's not okay to tell them that the world is a hopeless and terrible place.
No, I think that's quite a realistic way to look at things.
Good. Okay, good. Thank goodness.
Doesn't get better.
You're still here, so that's good. You didn't think, well, there's no point doing a bloody podcast, is there? It's all rubbish.
We've got comics to talk about, though.
That's true.
So.
It does make it worthwhile.
Comics make life worthwhile.
And that's Jon.
Hello, I'm Jon.
How are you, Jon?
I'm alright, how are you?
I've apparently got a bit of a cough.
You've always got a bit of something.
I
You're
know.
like ill will.
Yeah,
from the Beano.
I do suffer. Was that what?
Was it the Beano or was it the Dandy?
I don't know.
That
That's
had
going
ill
back a
will
bit.
and the germs, and there were the germs that used to live in his mouth.
I do not know what you're talking about. That sounds amazing.
It was a comic strip in the Beano or the Dandy. I can never remember. They all kind of blur into one homogenous strip now.
Right, I'm going to write that down. Ill will, because I want to know about
germs.
that. And the germs.
The germs were kind of the main focus of the comic, but it was occasionally they'd sort of pull back the lens and you'd be able to see what Will's life was like, which was usually he was at home in bed, ill.
Oh, man. That sounds quite depressing. Are you sure it was just, I mean, did he have like some long-term debilitating wasting illness or something? Is that what the bugs were?
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I bet he had like cancer or something. It was
They
actually
were cancer.
quite a depressing comic.
Cancer of the mouth, and they were all like little cancers. That's all. They were little tumours. Oh my God. Kids comics used to be. I'm glad they've all died. Kids comics, not Will. not Will or the children.
He wasn't the healthiest of people, so.
Jessie, when Jon and I grew up, there was still quite a healthy humour and kids comics industry in the UK. I think we've talked about it before, actually. It wasn't all like TV licensed magazines with giveaways in them. We actually had proper comics, not just the Beano. There were others.
I was going to say about 50% of it was TV licensed comics.
Oh no, that's true.
Gifts sellotaped to the cover.
It used to be lovely.
Every time you used to get the gift, you'd have to try and remove it without tearing the cover.
Oh.
It was impossible.
But
that sounds like a nightmare.
It was.
But it used to be a bit lovelier for people who liked comics, because for kids who liked comics, because you could just go into W.H. Smith's or somewhere, and there'd be loads of things you could read. It used to be quite cool. Not so anymore, and all of the British creators have to go to America to make a living now. It's not right. Anyway, so Jon's okay. He's pitching in. Yeah. He only knew he was going to be doing this today, but luckily he's had comics and he's had a beer. So it should all go swimmingly. It's going to be fine.
This isn't going to be like the early Momcast, Nick. Don't worry.
He's. I think it was me who used to be drunk when we started podcasting.
He's already. You? I think we all were.
Yeah, that's true. He's already been giving Jessie hair care tips, which is quite nice and
surprising considering the difference in our hair.
Yes,
i.e. that she has some.
If you've ever seen a picture of Jon, which you probably won't have because I think he's eradicated all of them from the internet.
It took some time, but I think I've just about achieved it.
Yeah, I understood why you did your best to get rid of all of the stuff from that period when you were doing amateur pornography and the camboy stuff. I get that, but you didn't have to get rid of all of the pictures of you on the internet.
I'm not quite. Is this a joke or?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, he didn't really. It wasn't really a career. He just sent stuff round to his friends.
I just needed money, and I'd just been raised from the dead or something. And
I feel a bit left out now. Actually, I didn't get to see anything.
It was a long time ago.
It's okay. I've still got the files somewhere. I won't send them to you.
People seem to get into trouble when they send stuff like that through the internet and stuff these days. I don't understand.
The internet is safe. What are you talking about?
No, it's completely safe.
No one can see anything on the internet.
Do you ever watch Criminal Minds? Do either of you ever watch Criminal Minds?
I know of it.
Nope.
We love Criminal Minds. It's so stupid and dumb and nice. But, like, when they are dealing with a murder that is nothing to do with anything you know about, you tend to think, oh, this is okay, this is probably written quite well. Whenever they write about something you know, like if it's anything to do with science fiction or video games or anything, suddenly my wife Amy is sitting there trying to watch the programme but having to tell me to calm down every few seconds because she can feel my eyes rolling out of my head. She can hear I'm sitting there tutting and huffing and saying, but that's not what Twitter's like. That's not what. And we watched one the other day, and the murder victim was someone who was trying to get a really high profile on Instagram or something like that, and they were taking lots of selfies, and then the team were talking about the murders, and so they were talking about selfies, and I swear in the cold open they said the word selfie about 50 times. It was so weird. They just kept saying selfie, yes, and it was one of those situations where the writers had clearly done loads of research online about this stuff. So every single they wanted the viewer to know they'd done all of this research. So a character would say to them, yes, I believe 70% of all teenagers between the age of such and such it was just embarrassing. It was so funny. I loved it.
That's sort of like the Big Bang Theory. Like, I have so many problems with the Big Bang Theory, but one of the main ones is they're supposed to be like a nerdy, geeky show, right? Every time they talk about anything geeky, nerdy, they're usually wrong. Like, they were playing Halo. Oh, I just blew someone's head off. No, Penny. You cannot blow someone's head off on Halo. Or, like, Howard was caught having sex on World of Warcraft. I believe you can't touch another person in World of Warcraft. Like,
that's sad.
It always confuses
so
me.
bad.
With Big Bang Theory in particular is obviously it's a Warner Brothers show. Now, if you ever actually look at the comic shop they go into before it burnt down, like...
Did that happen?
Yeah.
What, it burnt down? Yeah, it was the end of, like, a couple of series ago.
It was me who set it on fire.
Oh.
I can't say I blame you, but I'm like the guy in there that owns it, Stewart, always used to complain about, I never make any money. And I'm like, well, that's because all you sell is DC stuff.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. All DC, all the time. And then actually, like, the other day I was watching it and I was like, oh my god, there's a picture of Wolverine. I don't know, I mean, you compare, like, Big Bang with something like Community, which is effectively
perfect,
brilliant. Yeah,
or the IT crowd, which it came out immediately after the IT crowd, I think, because I always
thought of Community as what the Americans would do if they made Spaced, but if they made a proper American, not like a McSpaced thing.
Yeah,
we're talking like it's got all the same sort of points that it hits on as Space did, but in an American way.
But anyway, getting off on a tangent really early, and we try really hard to be positive. We try really hard to be positive, and if we keep talking about the Big Bang Theory, I'm going to stop being positive really, really quickly. Do you know it's by the people who did 2.5 Men, right?
Yeah, I know.
Exactly the same people. Why do people expect it to be?
You have to bear in mind, the only reason I watch Big Bang Theory is because it's on when I eat my dinner.
That is stupid. You do know the remote control still works while you're eating, right?
No,
I know, but How I Met Your Mother's finished, and it's never...
Exactly, that's exactly what I used to do. I used to get dinner, and I used to put Big Bang Theory on because it was just the right amount of time. I didn't get to the end sometimes, but, like, you know...
And I mean,
I imagine it's a good way of getting you to eat as quickly as possible.
Melissa and Joey?
Is that a thing?
Have you seen it?
Is that Melissa Joan Hart and Joey Lawrence?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Seriously, any sitcom where the two main characters have the names of the main actors just makes you wonder, like, what is the problem with these people? Do they need their own names in the script just so they know when to read their lines?
So, see, the problem is Jack Nicholson quite often plays characters called Jack, doesn't he? So
I don't know if that's his fault, though.
No, maybe not.
I don't think he names.
No, you're probably right. Should we talk about comics?
Anyway,
I could ask you both about how things have been going, but clearly what's been going on is you've both been accidentally watching episodes of Big Bang Theory because you happened to be eating at the time they came on.
Well,
I haven't been watching it for a while, I have to say. I'm proud of myself for this.
It's not really fair. I know lots of people really enjoy it, and it's not their fault. They just don't know any better. Who wants to talk about comics? But I should, because I've got loads. Well, not loads, and there's one book that we all want to talk about.
And I can go for an hour on this book.
Good. Okay, well, that's good. But don't, though.
Oh.
Anyone listening, if you just want to fast forward now?
In a little bit, there will be a contribution from Kehaar as well. We'll do that after the comics, and then we'll go. What, John? What do you want to say, John? What? You're looking at me expectantly.
Nothing. I'm waiting for you to start talking.
Yeah. Well,
you had your hand out. Doesn't that mean something?
Holding a pose.
I'm at that point. I'm at that point in my caffeine intake where everything is significant. Obviously, pretty soon I'm going to go cross-eyed and start buzzing like a hummingbird. I bought the second issue of Rasputin yesterday. It's $3.50 from Image Comics. I'm not sure how much that is in English money. It's written by Alex Grecian and with art by Riley Rossmo. Also colour by Ivan Placentia. It's got quite nice colours. It's the second part of I don't know if it's a mini-series or what it is exactly, but it is a fictionalised retelling of the story of the famous Mad Monk Rasputin, who was famously hard to kill. In this comic, the suggestion is that the reason he was hard to kill is, and particularly hardy, is that he had some powers, like actual powers, not just that are defined kind of in the comic. In the first issue, we saw how he was present at the death of his father, who was an arsehole, and we saw his relationship with his mother in the background he came from, and this was all framed by scenes where he was being betrayed, where as a much older man he was being betrayed by his friends who were trying to kill him. He was apparently, lots of people did try and kill him, the real Rasputin, when he was really alive. So it's quite interesting. Maybe when it's all done, I will go and try and find out more about the actual historical figure, because I think it might spoil it if I know too much about him at this point. But it's really good. Alex Grecian's a pretty good writer. He manages to handle, I don't know if he does comics really, or if he's a novelist or something. I've not heard the name before. But he doesn't overdo the dialogue or anything like that. It's really nice. He lets Riley Rossmo do most of the storytelling. Riley Rossmo is a great, really, really good artist, and he's got this style that's quite cartoony but still very grounded, and everything feels really real and solid and stuff. A big part of this issue is taken up by a bar fight that just seems to strike up in this Russian bar between lots of hairy men in fur, and it introduces us to one of the people who was apparently Rasputin's friend for a really long time, but who is also present at the scene where they're trying to kill him. So in the first issue, you weren't entirely sure who these people were who were at the dinner table trying to kill him. Apparently some of them are people he's known for a really long time. It's a really, really good comic, really bold use of colour. The cover is amazing, red and black and white, sort of. It is the bar fight that's happening, but the composition of it's absolutely lovely. I need to start getting bags and backers for my comics, because they're really getting knackered in my bag. I've just noticed.
You are aware that our comic shop does a lovely service where they bag and board your comics for you.
They charge for that shit. I ain't doing that. I can put a comic in a bag.
Price.
I'm pretty sure it's like 10p.
For per comic?
Yeah.
That's loads.
Is it?
It seems like it might be.
It's a bag and a board.
Anyway, because the bolder a cover, the more flat areas of colour that there are. This is a bit of comic care info for the listener. The more likely you are to notice when stuff goes wrong with a cover. It's rubbish. I mean, it's a good cover. It's just rubbish that I'm not looking after it properly. What else did I get? Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It isn't often you get a title that has two of those in it. I quite like it. Is
this an adaptation of the movie or a continuation of the story? Or
It is related. It's tied into the movies. What I didn't realise when I bought it, I bought it because I really liked the cover, and I'd heard someone talking about it online. It's written by Michael Moreci with art by Dan McDaid, and it's from Boom. It's $3.99. And colours by Jason Jordie. It's a pretty good muted colour palette in it.
$3.99 though.
Yeah, I know. It's not my. It's out of my price range, isn't it?
You must really love those monkeys.
I am. The main reason I mentioned the colourist, it is a nice colour job, but the main reason I mentioned the colourist Jason Jordie is that his name reminds me of Jordie Bellaire, who is another colourist who's kind of making colourists, like, bringing them to the fore. So I really notice colourists now because of her. It is $3.99, yeah, so I don't know if I'll get all of them, but I did like the look of this one. It's got a really striking cover. I haven't seen the second of the two Dawn of the Planet of the Rise of the Planet of the Apes ones.
There's Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and then there's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. So is it not good? I haven't seen it. It's not as good as Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
But you just couldn't help yourself with the pun.
Wait, which one's which one? Because I got confused. Like the one that came out with Malfoy in it.
That's the first one.
That's right. And then Dawn was with
the one with Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, I was going to say
Mr. Oldman and a whole bunch of other people. Yeah.
I don't know. I found Dawn of the Planet of the Apes a bit drawn out and a bit. Not a lot seemed to happen in it, and
okay,
it's still a good film and. but it basically feels just like a campaign to give Andy Serkis an Oscar for a mocap performance.
Oh, okay.
Why not?
He is good.
No, to be
fair,
he is like in the same way that he was amazing in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. He's got Caesar nailed down perfect.
The interesting thing, well, not the interesting thing, because it's literally just how I feel about him, but when I first saw Andy Serkis being interviewed, I think it was around the time of Gollum, I was just like, I felt like he was basically Anthony Daniels all over again, which is Anthony Daniels played C-3PO. He was the dude in the suit, and when you hear him being interviewed, he seems to think that most of the success of all of the Star Wars films is because of his amazing performance. And it's made me hate C-3PO because he comes across as quite arrogant. And so the first time I saw, and you know, C-3PO just kind of, anyway, like the suit makes you walk like that. It's not like he's really doing anything that physical, I don't think. He's just kind of walking like he's constipated. It's not that big a deal. So when I first saw Andy Serkis being interviewed and he was quite full on about what it's like to get into the minds of these characters, I thought, man, this guy's a jerk and a nerd. And then you see Gollum and you're like, okay, yeah, fair enough. That is the best performance in that whole film. He does okay. And King Kong has its flaws as a film, but he's great in that.
Yep.
And he's just really good. But anyway, I haven't seen the second one.
It is worth watching still.
Even though it's Yawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Well, no, if only because you get to see an ape riding a horse, dual welding machine guns.
See, no, I heard really good things about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Yeah,
it could just be
really good things.
It's just a personal
surprisingly.
Opinion.
A lot of the really good things I heard about it came from me talking about the trailer after I'd watched it to myself. I really, really liked the look of the trailer, so I will go.
The trailer was good.
It was one of 3 films that I saw trailers for that I really wanted to go and see at the cinema because they looked amazing. And I can't remember what the other 2 films are. I did not see a single one of those films at the cinema. I'm so rubbish at getting to the cinema. It's not an interesting story. Anyway, so Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I was concerned that potentially not having seen the second film would cause me problems with this one. As it turns out, which I didn't find out until after I'd finished reading it, it takes place between, because it doesn't indicate this at any point in the comic, it just says it in a bit of editorial at the end. It takes place between the 2 films. No, so it's
a good lead up.
Yeah. But also I think because with the film there is a sense of there's obviously a 10-year gap, and the film gives you enough information to go on, but it still strikes me that that's a pretty good area to mine for ideas and just go, hey, what can we make that do?
I get the feeling it's about the dude who's in the trailer a lot. Kind of got a big square face. Looks very serious, little curly hair on his head.
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
Because there's a character in it who the likeness is quite similar. What this issue does is it sets up the what's happening with the apes. They're starting to decide. They've set up in the forests. They've started to decide what they're going to do next. And at the same time, the guy, who I think is the guy from the trailer, although I don't know his name because I haven't seen the film, he's there with his wife and son. He's not in the forest with the apes. He's somewhere else. He's in the middle of nowhere in this house. It isn't really explained, but you get a sense that something bad has happened. Humans are struggling now. We're no longer the dominant species, which I think is the status quo in the film. It's not that the apes have taken over. It's just that people are dying out. There's a plague or something that's affected them, and so they're very strapped for resources. The stuff they have got is starting to die down, and his wife isn't very. They're worried about illness as well, and there are marauders and stuff. So these 2 different stories going on. The apes, I had a bit of trouble with because apes do all kind of look the same. So the way they deal with that is
racist.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the way they deal with that is one of them is an orangutan who I think is from the first film, and I guess is in the
Moreci. The big one.
Yeah.
Big circus ape.
I do like an orangutan.
Yeah, he's cool. He's easily my favourite of all the sort of simian.
Yeah, I like orangutans a lot. And then there's another one. There's what's the name of the main ape?
Caesar.
So Caesar's clearly the leader, but there are a couple of others. He's very good at thinking. He's the smartest. He's got the most empathy. He cares the most about them living harmoniously, the apes living harmoniously. And then you get this sense there's another ape that you do instantly recognise because he's been brutalised. He looks like he's been tortured, basically, across one side of him. And he's clearly the better warrior. I was reading, or I was listening to some people talking about how psychologically there are two different sorts of leadership. I think it was on Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, how you'll have the social leader and the task-oriented leader or whatever. So one will, and that will emerge from a group. One is really good at keeping the group socially cohesive, or the team socially cohesive, and the other is the one who would normally lead them when they're going on missions and stuff like that.
They're
and
quite hero traits as well.
Yeah,
like you either usually get you get the sort of muscle, or you get the brains, really.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's
but
kind
also
of
the way you put it sounds a bit like Apes do The Apprentice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to think too hard about The Apprentice because I want my brain to stay in my head and not bleed out my eyes. But so there's this sort of conflict that's hinted at between there might be a power struggle, but thankfully that never really comes out because it'd be interesting, and it's kind of the natural way for these sorts of stories to go. But at the same time, it has been done, and I think it's been done in the Planet of the Apes films, the old ones before and stuff. What the real theme in this though is, and it's happening for both groups. Both Caesar's group are comfortable, but he's thinking, but we can't just stay here. Like, we have to, if we don't expand, the freedom is just the start. Being free is just the start of something. It can't be the end result. Otherwise we'll just, like, I don't know, stagnate or whatever. And at the same time, you've got the family of humans who their resources are dwindling, but they have a safe place. And so one of them is saying, we've got to go and try and find something. And the other is saying, well, but we're safe here. We should stay. And so that's the theme that's coming out in it. The writing is really good. As I said, I did get a bit confused when the apes were talking to each other, but the visual storytelling by Dan McDaid is really, really good. He does make the apes look different from each other. I'm just an idiot and I have trouble parsing art. Especially when once I worked out that they had different traits, I did, physical traits, I did sort of, start to catch up. But in my defense, there are a lot of comic artists who don't draw the same characters consistently across a comic. So I am sometimes sort of assuming the worst when it comes to artists. So the other book I want to talk about, and, Jessie and I did have a bit of a conversation about this in the comic shop because it's a DC book and I haven't bought a DC book in ages. How do you feel? I was going to say, yeah. I feel really good. It's a $2.99 book, or certainly this issue was. I've got a sneaking suspicion that I'm buying a new DC 52 book just as they're starting to think about getting rid of the whole thing again. But anyway, that's let's hope. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. But it's Gotham by Midnight. It's $2.99. It's written by Ray Fawkes with art by Ben Templesmith. It was really Ben Templesmith who got me reading it, who did it, because I really like 30 Days of Night, and he's done some stuff with Warren Ellis that's really good. And I'm always cautious of saying that about someone, because those books were a really long time ago, and it must be a bit weird when someone says, oh yeah, I really like the stuff you did years ago, and they don't know a thing about what you've been doing since then. But, Fell was really good, and so was 30 Days of Night. And he's done lots of stuff with tentacle horror in it since, and I'm not really into that sort of thing. So, but it's the story of a unit of the Gotham City police force that only deals with supernatural stuff. And as you'd expect, that doesn't sit very well with the organisation of Gotham City Police Department. The issue starts with what you think is a new recruit turning up, a new member of the team turning up, but actually he's an internal affairs guy who's come along because this team has been set up a year before. They haven't had any, or however long before, they haven't had any arrests. There's nothing on record. They've been funded, but nobody knows what they do. They don't put case files forward or anything like that because all of their cases are kind of weird. So they don't put anything in. So Internal Affairs think it's an accountant, like a fraud thing that they're creaming off the money somehow. And so you've got this guy we're introduced to the group through this IA guy who doesn't believe. Everyone's kind of hinting that what they're into is really weird, but he doesn't really believe any of it. He says at the beginning, this is just a formality. I'm supposed to do this visit, but I'm going to close you down. That's what I'm going to do. But at the same time, there's this story introduced about these two little girls who went missing and then turned up again, and the parents are still claiming. The assumption is that the little girls just ran away and then they came back, but the parents are still freaking out because the two little girls are just talking in this nothing language. It's a made-up language. They seem to be scared of their parents. They're really creepy it's really creepy. And whenever what's really cool about the way this book's written is when the police are talking to the little girls and when they're talking to each other, the banter is quite good. The way they communicate with each other is quite good. There's a nun in their team and a nerd. They're consultants and stuff. So it's all there's two detectives. There's kind of the guy who's the boss of the team. One of the detectives is Jim Corrigan, who's the Spectre. So, but I don't know what that really means in this context because I don't know what's going on in the DC universe at the same time. And then there's a nun and a kind of a supernatural nerd, a supernatural things nerd who are consultants for the team. So they're all involved in the story. When they're all talking to each other, there's a lot of cynicism and stuff like that in the way they talk to each other. They're all fairly hard bitten. Batman turns up. I don't think you hear him say anything. Literally, you just see Corrigan talking to him at one point. And then when the thing with the two little girls turns up and they start investigating the case, it's really creepy. I don't really know how to explain it beyond to say that for a mainstream book coming out of DC, it's kind of got a real old Vertigo, properly creepy feel to it. Ray Fawkes writes it really well, but Ben Templesmith's really restrained about the way he presents these two little girls. It's Ben Templesmith art, so it is weird and very scratchy and kind of very sketchy, but it's also beautiful in its own grubby, weird, disgusting way. And there was a moment in it where I hoped it was going to be a done-in-one because I really wanted to know what was going on with these two freaky girls, and it isn't. It's the first part of a story, but that's probably quite good because it means I enjoyed it enough that I want the next issue, doesn't it? Which I'm betting isn't going to be $2.99. But so it's definitely worth a read of the first issue. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think John should talk about The Massive.
Yeah, this is going to be a reasonably short one, and it's incredibly difficult because this is issue 29 of The Massive, written by Brian Wood, art by Gary Brown, and colours by Jordie Bellaire.
Mm-hmm.
This is the penultimate issue.
Right, so
to discuss this without giving away massive spoilers.
The massive spoilers.
Yeah, the massive
spoilers.
Is incredibly difficult. It's also really odd because normally The Massive is a book that I have to take a bit of time to read because there's normally sort of quite dense themes in it. It's very interesting. This issue I read really quickly, and the way it's paced and the way it's written are very quick. The first 4 pages or so, hang on, let me check. 1, 2, 3, 4, actually maybe 6, 7.
That is super decompressed.
8
That's
pages.
ridiculous.
Yeah, right. Well, about the first 8 pages, I was sat there going, I don't get this. What's going on? How's this link into? And then all of a sudden, it makes perfect sense. I've really enjoyed The Massive all the way through, and if you're reading it, well, you're going to have read the issue already. You don't need me to tell you to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really difficult to say anything without going, oh, and then this happens, and give away something that's kind of like there's a couple of really big reveals in this.
Massive
one in particular.
Reveals?
I don't want to go with the
time,
pun.
Yeah. Sorry. So low hanging fruit there.
There is a huge reveal in this that pretty much is probably one of the turning points of the entire story. So it feels a bit weird, kind of just sitting there going like, I actually can't talk about it. But Garry Brown's art is lovely, and I think was it you that said on the last pod we did together about Jordie Bellaire's colours and about how she is incredibly unique in every book she does.
Mm-hmm.
And her palette for the Massive has been really nice, and it's odd because there's been different artists going all the way through it, but I think her colours have kind of held some of it together.
Absolutely, she's got the art direction.
Yeah,
is hers,
she's given it the feel and the sense of everything, and it's actually, I sometimes find when artists change on books really jarring, but the colours have helped smooth that transition quite a lot. It's
a really muted colour palette for her, because sometimes she either goes with super bold colouring, she does on Manhattan Projects.
Exactly. And it's really odd because this is the complete opposite end of the spectrum to that, quite literally the spectrum. But there's too many puns in this.
It's all right, it's fine. I think that's that could be a new thing we do. It's fine, it's okay.
But
sorry, go on.
No, but I was going to say, and it's a very good example of what the book does. It's just I can't actually say what happens in it, and it's really annoying because what happens in it is great.
Garry Brown, I think it's safe to say that no one's going to be picking that issue up on its own.
On its own, yeah.
Garry Brown's done an awful lot of it, though, hasn't he? He's drawn a lot of it, and I've never seen his art before. So
yeah, I think he's been the main sort of go-to artist, but it's kind of he's done chunks of it, and then it's been sectioned off. Like other stories have been done by other people, but this is kind of the point. This issue is basically where the knot gets tied, and everything comes together, and it's like, right, okay, that's good.
How are you feeling about it? Because it's 30 issues?
It's going to be 30 issues. There have been points where I've really struggled with it and been really sort of like, why this? I'm not sure. And then it's got to this point and I'm like, no, I like this. I'm glad I stuck with it. But I also like it because it's not like a 70 or 80 issue comic epic, but it is still a story that is completely self-contained and works perfectly in... Like, it doesn't feel like it's been cut off before its time, but it also doesn't feel like it's been stretched beyond its limits.
I'm reading it in trade, so I really like it. It's a really good comic, I think.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so, and what else did you get?
ODY-C, or the Odyssey.
ODY-C.
I've been calling it ODY-C just because it's... I just look at it and see the letters. Obviously, it's called Odyssey.
Did you just realise that?
No, I knew from the beginning. When somebody says, oh, it's going to be a version of the Odyssey, and you see the title spelled ODY-C, you pretty much do think, yeah, that's Odyssey. It's just, I look at it and see the letters. It's like this comic I've got here called the MASSIVE.
It's very, yeah, I mean, I can see how someone who has maybe a dissociative disorder or something might read it that way. I get it. But the thing I hadn't noticed before about it is that the Y is the symbol for
female.
Are you kidding me?
I really hadn't noticed, but then I didn't know anything about the book until I was reading it. Really, I
didn't twig that either till just then.
I knew from the name of it that it was going to be heavily based on the Odyssey. I didn't know that it was going to be I didn't know how closely it was going to be.
It is essentially a retelling.
A retelling of it.
Yeah. Say.
And I didn't know that there was going to be so much gender stuff in it. Jessie is really familiar with the Odyssey.
I am very familiar, yeah.
John's a little bit familiar with the Odyssey.
Only because I watch Ulysses 31.
And as the only Greek in the room, I have to say that I'm probably the reigning most ignorant person in the room about the Odyssey. I know vaguely what it's about, but I've never read, I've never studied it, and I've never really, I know Odysseus. I didn't watch, the thing, Ulysses, didn't watch that, because I was too old by the time it came on, so I just don't know it. You're studying it from like an academic perspective, though, as well, aren't you?
I am. I'm actually reading. Well, I've already read the book, but we're sort of going over everything because we are preparing for an exam on this, obviously. And weirdly enough, the Odyssey is like one of the few epics that doesn't have a blockbuster movie. Like Troy does, Ilium does, so it's very strange that the Odyssey doesn't really.
Isn't it super long compared to, like, is it Homer's Odyssey?
Yeah, Homer's Odyssey. It's not super long. I would say you could do a TV show on this or something. I think I haven't actually seen one, but
there's Ulysses.
But it is an epic poem, so you would expect it to be long. So,
yeah, okay. No, that's true. I understand. I'm not dissing how long it is. Although I do have a really short attention span, so I'd probably struggle with it.
It is quite hard to read, to be fair. The actual Odyssey, unless you're reading a specific version and you're reading it with someone who knows what they're talking about, it does get a bit fucking hard to understand, essentially.
The Odyssey is something I've always kind of wanted to read, but every version I've picked up has just been... Because effectively it's like things like the original Greek sort of legends and that's the beginning of what is effectively fantasy fiction. Well, it's the beginning of fiction, effectively.
Yeah, okay. I'll buy that.
It's always interested me that this is kind of where it all took shape, and I've always wanted to see how it began, but it's just... Some of the language is obviously a bit out of my understanding.
You're talking about Homer, aren't you, right now? But because everything you've said about that and what Jessie just said about it's a good idea to read it with someone who knows what they're talking about, I could say about this comic, probably. I will say now, on balance, I did really like it and I will be getting the next one. But it's... Yeah, I felt very much dropped in at the deep end on a lot of it for various reasons.
That's what I thought as soon as I was reading it, because I was so excited. I was obviously getting all the terminology, and they used the word hybris, for example, which I was like, key term word, like I know exactly what that means, and that means arrogance, and it's usually punished by the gods. So I found like those little things were quite good, or like the use of epithets, or the fact that it's written in like sort of Homer's language. And I was sort of thinking, how is everyone else doing with this? Because I obviously have a good background. I know exactly what's happening, and I know exactly who these characters are and what their role was on. Well, in this, it's Troya and the destruction and that kind of thing. I mean,
I don't know. I found it quite easy, even just from the first page. I was like, right, okay, and just sort of put it all together. It all made pretty much perfect sense, but. And I think it's a very well written comic because it manages, from everything you've said, it brings in the elements of the classic and it has all the right sort of, I can't think of the word. Fence posts is the word that keeps coming into my head, and that's not what I mean. But
the landmark moments in the story, like the beats, the story beats,
and it feels like the story beats are all there to keep the people who are like really, really know about the Odyssey happy, but it also knows how to make it so it's not completely inaccessible to a fresh reader. I mean, I would say the map at the beginning helps, but
it's amazing, epic fold out.
To find a really big table and basically just put this book on it and open it up,
and just take it in. Really.
In which that picture is incredible. I started reading it and I was like, okay, well, fine. I'm not usually a fan of fold-out pages because they're generally really difficult to manage and trying to get them folded up in the right way is difficult. And to see that, well, one, it's really easy to fold back up, and two, it's just a really fucking incredible picture.
It really sets the good, like, it shows the setting and sends such a tone for it. You know exactly sort of where you've just landed.
I get the impression that covers, like, that one image covers what is probably a chunk of text. There's a lot of ideas in it, there's a lot of references to things, and all it's basically really saying is, right, we are beginning this at the end of something.
Yeah, which is the Trojan War in this.
Yeah, and it's a really really, really good way to start a book.
Did you both read the whole timeline before you started the comic?
Not
which timeline?
all of it, no. The timeline that's... I read bits of it, but...
No.
I kept getting distracted by the really nice picture.
I think I skimmed over it because I wanted to see what this bit was about, but I didn't necessarily
And you
read
knew
the
most of it as well,
didn't yeah.
I should say, I'll say it because we've kind of jumped straight in. It's written by Matt Fraction with art by Christian Ward.
We should probably bring it up.
It's the first issue from Image and it's $3.99. We've just been talking about the Odyssey really, and it's a retelling of the Odyssey, but it's set in space. It's more of a space opera.
Definitely, yeah.
Than anything else. And so it's more science fantasy than science fiction, I think. And it's not exactly gender swapped because most of the characters, most of the male characters have become female characters, or all of the male characters have become female characters.
Pretty much, yeah.
And most of the female characters have stayed female. That's what they say in the back, anyway.
I think the only exception I found is Athena is now a man.
Yeah.
Which you don't get told it's Athena because I didn't see the mention of the name, but you know it's a guy with an owl. I'm pretty sure it's Athena.
See, here's the thing. I felt like it didn't handhold the reader at all, which I really applaud normally. But I think it's been noted. I think it's been noted on We Have Issues. It's certainly a thing that's come up a lot in previous podcasts. I sometimes have a problem when I can't quite tell what a comic's going to be for the first few, or a story's going to be for the first few pages or the first issue or whatever. And what's interesting is it was my memory of Pretty Deadly, which I found the first issue of that was completely obscure to me. I could tell the people involved were really talented, but I didn't have a clue what was going on in the first issue, and it was very poetic. Like this, it was very poetic. It was knowing how that turned out that really made me think, well, I'll just read it. I don't know what's going on. I literally didn't know what was going on for the first half of this comic. I was just reading it going, well, I mean, there are lots of names. So that's good. I think that's refers to that person and stuff. It's all good. The thing that you've mentioned a little bit, Jessie, which I thought was really clever, but in the context of a comic, comes across as experimental, but might be straight from the poem, was that there are bits where there'll be a number, and is that like a stanza or something?
I think it's supposed. The version I'm reading doesn't have that.
Yeah.
It has like 9 numbers instead. But I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing. With
it's
that.
definitely a reference to something poetry-ish.
Which it really encapsulates that whole Homer vibe, essentially.
Which I had no context for at all. So I was like, This is odd. Am I understanding this? Am I enjoying it? I liked it, but like I said, I was very. And the other thing is, because it's science fantasy, you're at the same time as you're being introduced to quite a big cast of characters and quite a lot of big ideas about the war and everything that they're in. You're also being introduced to all of this technology that you don't really know what it does until you see it doing something. So they're in shift ships, but you don't. And that's quite cool. It's like they seem to be navigated by people in pods or wombs or something, and there's this idea in it that is brilliant, that they need to be in harmony, otherwise everything fucks up. Which
is like, just like sailors would with their ships. It was great. I like that was one of my favourite things. The actual ship was a genius idea, and like I personally thought they were wombs. I think they mentioned that. But I thought that was like a really good idea. Like, even more female.
One of the
empowerment.
Yeah, there is. One of the things I really like about it as well is that one of the things I really like is the art.
Yeah,
I loved Matt Fraction's writing, especially considering this time last year I'd never read one of his books, and now I'm reading.
So different from everything else.
2 or 3. Yeah, and this is different, but it's the way in which you have a page where a shift ship is coming out of the page with the fleet following behind it. There's images of what I presume they look like horses through what appears to be waves, and then you've got Odysseus walking out of the waves on steps, but
that's
looks...
not her, is it?
That's Zeus, I should point out, or whatever.
Oh, right,
the
it's
name
not
is.
Odysseus. That might explain my confusion with that bit.
Dude, even I knew that, and I'm across the table
God.
and didn't know what was going on.
But it's the way in which the stuff in space travel looks like it's actually travelling through space and time.
Mm-hmm.
It feels... I don't know, the only way I can describe the art is it looks like, instead of going, I'm just going to draw the pictures, Christian Ward's basically got a load of paint pots of different colours and just tipped them all over at once into a big pit, and then basically done the art with his foot or something. And it's brilliant. That makes it sound really
But in a
bad.
good
Probably
way.
like my
It's
favorite
really-
art I've seen in a while. And as soon as I saw
It's
the
so
art in this,
unique.
I was like, I need to find Christian Ward on Tumblr. I need to reblog all of his. Like, people need to know about how genius this art is. And so
I mean,
happy.
James has a piece of an original art by him from a previous book. Yeah.
Does he? Which one was that?
I can't. There was a. The weird thing about this book, because this is the first comic I've read by him, but the weird thing about this book is I think it's actually quite restrained in terms of how crazy what's going on the pages. He's done medium stretching stuff before.
Yeah.
I just can't for the life of me remember what the name of the book was. But yeah, so James has some of his art. He loves him.
See, I think I remembered James talking about him last time when he mentioned the alternative Forbidden Planet covers for one of the Doctor Who series
Actually,
going on.
maybe, yeah.
I think, and then I sort of made a joke about I was shipping Christian Ward and James because James said he had had a bit of a crush on the art or something.
Maybe. That does sound like you and James, actually, thinking about it.
So as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, I completely get where James was coming from.
I think the thing with the art, I mean, it's more the colours that really sell it, but it's just the sense of everything feels like it's happening underwater almost, which, given that the Odyssey is obviously originally about a boat finding its way
maritime.
home,
Yeah.
it feels like it really fits, and it gives the fact that it's set in space a lot more like the way in which they pilot the ships is by sitting in a bubble filled with fluid. And I'm not sure how the science is going to link into this, but it's just, the artwork's amazing. It's easily the best looking book I've seen this year by an absolute mile. It's just like nothing else on the stands at all.
Also, I think there was a page that you were on, and it looked like there was, I think they were coming out of some wave, whole thing, and it was like Poseidon's wrath, which very much happens a lot in the Odyssey actually, and you can exactly see exactly what they were trying to say with that. It was just fantastic, and it is in space, but water or whatever.
I think that's the thing for all of the writing and whatever. There's a lot of the storytelling and the heavy lifting being done by the artwork in this. They're managing to take entire chunks of poetry and effectively transfer them into art.
I was surprised actually about how little writing there was.
Yeah.
I mean, there are pages without writing, especially there's a flashback, I think, of the War of Troya, about Odysseus sort of thinking back to her. Yeah.
That's incredible.
There are two sort of pages with no
text
whatsoever, or at least not in a language that we can understand, and that it's all done in red compared to everything else.
It's a very central colour. It's really, really interesting.
Is that a flashback, or I thought it was them attacking one of the ships that was attacking them?
It was a flashback, wasn't it?
I'm not sure, but there is an amazing moment where it's a standard 12-panel page, which is I guess a Watchmen thing, or was that a 9-panel page?
No, I thought it was 9 panels.
But it's got like a 12-panel page, but there are insets into it, and there's also movement through the page at the point where she kicks someone through one of the panel borders, and then on the next thing at the bottom, they've broken out the panel borders, and it gives a real sense of movement. The place where this issue really came together for me was quite near the end, actually. It's and I really can't talk too much about it without without spoiling it for anyone who hasn't read it yet, but because I need to find the human thing in a story. That's definitely something that I've gone on about at length before. And for me, a lot of this was about things happening. Lots of things. There was lots of plot, but I was having trouble working out my way into it. And then there's a scene, and again, we shouldn't say too much about it, but there's a scene where a big battle and a whole load of action has happened, and Odysseia and the crew of her ship have to deal with the aftermath, the emotional aftermath of something that happened, and they have to make a decision. And the way the character handles that, the way I think you two probably know the bit I'm talking about, and anyone who's read it will know the bit I'm talking about. But it's this one scene. It's one of the few scenes where there isn't any poetry to it. It's literally just people talking to each other and her having to make a decision, and it's a difficult one. Which was just the real scene at which I thought, yeah, okay, this has come together for me. I like this. I'm definitely getting the next one.
Yeah, I think the reason this is going to work so well, because this is a Nostos, this is a homecoming, and it's so personal to Odysseus, because it's effectively, with all the crew that he has around him, he will be alone. Well, she will be alone even. Yeah. Odysseia will be alone for most of this. There are some changes which I'm a bit iffy about, because I'm not quite sure how they will play out. And like coming into it, I'm a bit... I'm excited but worried, because I don't want this to be bad.
Yeah. In the little thing, in the bit of text at the back, there's not a lot of back matter. Well, I think actually there is quite a lot.
There's not actually at all. There's like 2 pages.
Oh, but it's Matt Fraction talking to the reader, and there's a whole bunch of art alongside it. So, but he does actually say that the thing that it kind of started from a place of doing a gender swapped, like he and Christian Ward wanted to do their Barbarella, he says. I know John was talking about that before we started recording as well. I think meaning the original comic rather than the actual film, although maybe a bit of that. So a big space epic. The weird thing about the film Barbarella, which I'm not sure if it comes through in the comics, is it's quite bubbly as well. It's quite silly and kitschy at times, not just because of the time. It was deliberately, it's quite fluffy, and this isn't fluffy at all. But he also says that like they started out from doing pretty much a spacefaring gender swapped version of the Odyssey, and it just every time he wrote some of it or they did a back and forth on something, it changed. So it probably will. I don't know if it's going to diverge lots from the basic beats of the story, but it is going to, as you guys noticed, and I just didn't register at all, not only are most of the characters female, but there's actually a third gender, seems to be a third gender introduced as well.
I didn't quite understand that, considering I think his her lover, Arrow, was that her name, I think?
Yeah.
I think they sort of mention... I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a third gender or something.
Or if it's a role or a position.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I through the markings on her face, she seems to have the same markings as Penelope on a later panel, which is Odyssea's wife.
Right. Which
is another weird, I found, not a weird choice, but an interesting choice, that they kept Penelope as a woman and not a man. Like gender swapped it to fit like... a standard role of a man and a woman in a relationship, which is quite interesting, and yet they kept the son as a male, which I don't know if that's a spoiler really, because from what I was reading earlier, they talk about bleeding age.
Yeah, and I caught that as well.
Yeah, and I assumed it was a daughter and then I was like, oh, a son. Okay.
The thing about it is that if people are reading this comic, having listened to what we're saying about it, they're going to be there's so much stuff happening, and there's so much stuff on the page that I think certain details of what we said, like the fact that which characters have been gender swapped and which haven't, will probably they'll forget them. I think the bit I was careful about is quite a substantial scene in it. And it'll be interesting to see if you work out while you're reading it, and I mean you specifically, Jessie, or people who know the original stories, how many of those decisions probably just happened in the organic process of making a comic, and how much of them you think you can see the reason why they did it afterwards?
I think they're definitely changing her son's role. I mean, in the Odyssey, the son's Telemachus' role was just to symbolize growing up and to emphasize the amount of the years that it took for Odysseus to come home, which was 20 years. And, you know, it was supposed to be like he was becoming like his father and whatever. And since this is quite a matriarchal society, from what I can tell so far, because all the sort of women are...
They're all women.
Yeah, they're all women. They're all taking charge,
people, yeah.
And I don't think that's the role that Tellem is going to be filling in this, I'm guessing.
Yeah. It is interesting. Bleeding Age is probably because in a language... Thinking about it now, Bleeding Age is probably because in a language formed in a matriarchal society, that'd make more sense. That was
exactly. I was talking about it to one of my friends. She's read the Odyssey. She's completely all over this stuff, and I was like, "You need to read this then, because you're going to love it." And she pointed out the same thing as you did. It's probably they're going to be changing some of the language to make it a matriarchal, like really give it that kind of feel.
It's really interesting because he says in the back that he wanted the one thing that I really didn't fit for me was Matt Fraction says in the back that he wanted to write a comic, create a comic with heroes in that his daughter could read about.
To.
And I wondered how much, because there are core themes that are very human. Maybe that's the way I have to find into it. As you said about going away and trying to get home and stuff like that. But I wonder, in a society where all of the characters, especially all of the strong authoritative characters, are women, if there's a point at which gender stops meaning, how much of a difference it's going to make?
Yeah.
If there's a point at which gender stops mattering quite so much, because part of the reason we have so many problems with gender in our society and the way it's represented and the way we deal with each other is because of the contrast. If we were all one gender, we probably wouldn't have an issue with gender because we'd all be one gender. But it's about the balance of power between them. And in this, it feels like it's all women or mostly women.
Yeah, there's no, you can't get past the gender, I think, for me. I think the first time you do see a guy is he's sort of become a slave.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's supposed to be Helen. That they were trying to get back. Well, I don't know the name.
Oh, we need to go back and read that because the character's been completely debased.
Yeah,
I should
point out the three kings that are talking at the beginning is Odysseus, Odyssea. I think it's Ennis, which is supposed to be Menelaus, who was married to Helen or whatever, and Agamemnon. But I think they changed that to Megon or something.
So the other thing, if you don't know the names, it's sometimes difficult to work out what are names and what are
I think I had to read that bit like a couple of times to go, oh, okay, I see that character's that character's that. And the first time you do see a guy, which I think is a guy, he looks like a gimp. So it doesn't seem to be like a power reversal where it's, they treat each other equally. I think it's really gonna knock down on the guys and
try and drum that point home. That's interesting. I did notice when you're reading it, if you're really super familiar with the story, and I'll be interested to know about how you experience this as well, Jon, because you know it a little bit. Are you kind of in your head having trouble with, because you know the story so well, switching the characters? Because you've referred to Odysseus he a few times. Is that just because you're really familiar with the story, so you know?
I'm thinking, but I don't have trouble reading this and going, I didn't have any trouble with that, to be fair. It is very good, and I love this book so much, and please pick it up.
Just the act of talking about it with you guys has made me like it. I enjoyed it, but it's made me like it a lot more, so I'm going to go back and reread it and see what I missed, I think. I didn't just skim the appendices, not the appendices, the bit at the beginning. I read a couple of paragraphs and thought, this is just all fantasy stories have this timeline. It's not going to be important. It's fine. I'll get what I need from the story. And that isn't actually the case for the first few pages. It was a bit confusing. Jon, did you have anything else to say about it, or are you happy?
No, I was going to say it's just weird because like last week we had Pax Americana, and this week we get this, and it's just like, okay, we've had 2 comics in 2 weeks that basically have done something to completely just remind you of why comics as an art form and as a storytelling medium works so well, but both for utterly different reasons.
Well, and I haven't read Pax Americana, but knowing who's involved with it, I imagine brilliant. It really stretches.
Well, it's Grant Morrison and Frank Quiet.
Yeah.
Like, you don't expect anything normal.
Something... I only read it as a single issue on its own, but it's something that completely... It's a commentary on comics and on history and politics, and it's completely... I need to read it again. I've read it a few times already just to try and get my head round what it was trying to say. And I get the same thing with this. There's so much in there that one read-through just doesn't do it justice. You need to read it, go back, read it again, and just try and sort of effectively deconstruct it.
Yeah.
Is Pax Americana like a tie-in with Multiversity? Or
it is,
yeah,
but I don't think any of the
Multiversity.
issues of that have been... I think it's been very deliberately... Yeah, it's...
Is it anything to do with DC? Because I really want to pick it up, because one of my
it's pretty
two
much...
favourite people, but...
It's basically... I think it's more to do with the Watchmen universe, but it's not directly linked to Watchmen, but it carries a lot of the same themes and ideas.
Nothing to do with 52, though, is it?
I've read the first couple of Multiversities, and he's doing something. I think ultimately it's going to be about 52 and about every other iteration, both Marvel and DC this summer. And I think Multiversity's probably DC's kicking that off a little bit for them. Are really going into how many different versions there are of everything, and I think whether or not they're commenting on that or whatever, but so Multiversity, it's like, I don't know if you've been reading Spider-Verse.
Yeah,
they're completely different levels of sort of comic, but it's in terms of whether it's related to DC 52, it's like in the same way that Spider-Verse is related to the Ultimate Universe, in that they kind of, it's all of the different DC iterations and ones that haven't been handled before and haven't been dealt with before and stuff like that. It's just really playing with that idea. I haven't read Pax Americana, but that's definitely what's been going on in the previous issues.
It's a very, very, very dense text.
Well, that's quite Leon Morrison, isn't it?
The opening pages alone are just one of the best panel sequences I think I've seen. It's just really cleverly done. And the thing is, you don't sit there and read it and at the end of it go, oh, now I see what they did. It's happening the whole time. You are constantly, as you read it, going, right, okay, this is happening. And it's just so well put together that you don't actually have to think about it. It's almost like they're just going, right, this is how it's working, and you pick up on it instantly. And it works so well for that.
It's a little bit like what they did with Flex Mentallo. I don't know if you guys read it.
Yeah.
It's really good. You read it and you're like, so trippy, like what is going on? And then you suddenly get it, and when you do get it, you're like, it's just... But they were doing it the whole time. It's
not like they suddenly explain everything at the end. It's kind of, it all fits. There's just a moment where it all unlocks for you. That's because I'm a bit distracted and confused when I'm reading most of the time. Nearly everything I read has anything that's even slightly complex has that moment for me. Oh, so that's okay. So like with the Odyssey, as I said, there was that one scene where I thought, oh no, okay, these guys do know what they're doing. It's not just all weird stuff. There is a heart to it and stuff like that. So I need to read. I don't think I'm going to read all of Multiversity, but everyone's been talking about that Morrison
I think
and
I'm just going to
issue.
have to pick it up, and if I don't get it, then tough, because I really want to read it.
I think Pax Americana in particular felt like it feels like they're actually making a point. And it's like they don't sort of overload it, but it's very clear that there is something more to it than just a story about a random universe.
Is the point anything to do with the fact that it came out on Alan Moore's birthday? Right.
Because Rasputin 2 came out a week after his birthday, and Alan Moore looks like Rasputin.
Maybe. Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
It's all a conspiracy. I think we're uncovering some really dodgy territory.
Wheels
to
within
say
wheels.
happy birthday to Alan Moore. That was it. Everyone wanted to say happy birthday.
I think we'll go to Kehaar. I think he's going to talk about a Punisher book.
Hi, Kehaar here from Dissecting Worlds. I'm going to talk about a subject close to young Mr. James' heart. I'm going to talk about Punisher Max. Now, I remember an eon ago hearing James talking about Punisher Max by Garth Ennis and what a great strip it was. And I went, that's interesting, because I have to say, my feelings on it were very much shaped by a bit of a bellend I know, who basically, it's great, it's full of swearing and blood and guts and like, which didn't really attract me to it. And I know that Garth Ennis can write stories where the shock factor seems to be the main factor he's going for. On the other hand, I really enjoy his war stuff, and I was a twonk. I should have thought that, of course, at the heart of the Punisher story is a war story. The story of Frank Castle, Vietnam-era Marine. Because that's what's come out. I've read 2 volumes, courtesy of the Liverpool Library Service. I've read From First to Last, which is effectively a collection of standalones, and Valley Forge, which, with typical good timing by me, is the end of the Garth Ennis run. Very quickly, on From First to Last. I really liked this. These are standalone noirish tales where either tell you something about the Punisher's background, or the Punisher is floating through it like a force of nature. Perhaps the most powerful is the Cell, which is set in a prison, but it's all really good stuff. There's a selection of different artists on duty: John Sullivan, Louis Lacoza, Richard Corbin, and different colourists as well. For brevity's sake, I will be disrespectful to them, but be that as it may, they all perform very admirably. Garth Ennis is not in his tits and boobies and people snorting aborted babies. Worse, he is delivering on the promise he shows in his war stuff as a master storyteller in that volume. Valley Forge is also good. Goran Parlov on art duties there. He has a great eye for detail. His art style is very much in the sort of standard comics milieu, but he's drawing real world stuff with just beautiful draftsmanship, great acting, great contrast between characters without swaying too deeply into cartoonishness. The story itself, being the end of a long run, is perhaps on face value a little cartoony, maybe a little kind of nonsense political, but the actual plot and the twists and turns of it and how things are delivered and how it again threads back into the history of the Punisher is again a tour de force. So I really enjoyed that as well. Of the 2, I would think First to Last is my favourite. You're getting contrasting art styles, you're getting interesting standalone stories. But I was both very pleasantly surprised by how much these stories affected me, considering that I don't really have a lot of engagement with the Marvel Universe full stop, and the Punisher in particular. So, until next time, this is Kehaar from Dissecting Worlds, sounding off.
Okay, so that was Kehaar. We're almost done, guys. That was to Jessie and Jon, not to you, listener. I don't call you guys. That'd be weird.
I call you listener.
Listener, you are listener. A couple of things. First thing is that I watched the Alan Moore Stewart Lee interview. There was there's an interview series on iPlayer at the moment, which is basically, I think the way it works is one person interviews another person, and then the next episode the other person interviews a next person.
It's a few years old, isn't it?
I guess it might be, but it's really good, and it's easy to forget when you only see what Alan Moore said in text that a lot of the time he's being whimsical. It doesn't, and he's British, so sometimes he's being sarcastic. Him on the films,
because he's British.
Yeah.
Have you ever read his guide on how to write comics?
No.
It's actually, I bought it a few years ago and I was genuinely surprised because it's actually quite funny.
He's written some of the best populist comics ever, like some of the most accessible comics. It's weird that, well, it's not weird, but he's known for all of the really highfalutin political stuff, which is fine, but
he's someone who's actually got quite a funny sense of humour.
When you hear him talking about the films on that Stewart Lee interview, Stewart Lee asks him, probably expecting to hear a bit of a rant, and that isn't what he gets at all. It's great. It's a really good interview. I'll put that in the show notes, which you can find if you go to wehaveissues.net. You'll see the page for this. So there's that. The talking about ODY-C and Pax Americana, that's what it's called, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
As John was a minute ago, and thinking about how they really kind of stretch the comic form as far as it'll go, reminds me, and we do talk about them a lot, so I'm sorry about that, listener, but this is kind of important for me because it's a time in comics that means a lot to me. Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men last week's or maybe the week before's episode handled the Demon Bear saga, which was in New Mutants, which was the point at which Bill Sienkiewicz started drawing. How's it pronounced? Sienkiewicz. I think he pronounces it Sienkiewicz.
He's also wrong in American. His son
he is American,
Polish.
yeah.
Sienkiewicz.
Yeah, okay. Sienkiewicz. But it's when he started doing New Mutants, and it wasn't the first thing he did in comics, but it was the first point I started reading him. And as they point out on that episode, it's the point at which a lot of people who've come since, who've been doing comics since, realised what you could do even within mainstream comics, because New Mutants was the second X-Men book. So, so go and listen to that because it's really, really good. I'll put that in the show notes as well. Before I forget, last weekend I was in Peterborough and I went to a new comic shop opened up in Peterborough, and I want to mention it because it's a really good little shop. It is quite little compared to our Forbidden Planet, but I went in there and I thought, no, this is, if what you're doing is comics and that's your focus, this is about the right size for a comic shop. It's called Close Encounters in Peterborough, and it's worth popping in because it's good.
That's very interesting because you shared a link, I think, once to that comic book shop, and it turns out that one of our followers on Instagram, that I followed, I can't remember if he followed me back, but he was like, oh yeah, I'm setting up a new comic book shop and whatever. I was joking about, I'm going to come and go and see it, whatever. And then it happened. Then you shared the
Oh, and then I said that, yeah.
I was like, oh, it's everywhere.
My sister is in Peterborough, so I think probably because she knows that I follow her and I'm friends with her on Facebook, she posted about it, and it's a weird place my sister is a weird place for me to find out comic news of any sort. It made me feel good to be buying shops from a comic shop in Peterborough because that's where I found my first comic specialty shop, which was House on the Borderland. R.I.P. House on the Borderland. I loved you. Like a hairy, hippie thingy. Jessie's doing the little heart thing that young people do, and it made me feel all sweet. So yeah, not as run by hippies as House on the Borderland was. Not run by hippies at all, actually.
Run by
but
very,
a nice shop.
very nice people.
Yes, they
Awesome
are good.
people.
And I bought 2 issues of Storyteller there because I missed the second issue when it came to Forbidden Planet. They sold out because they didn't order enough. But Close Encounters did. Anyway, it's not going to be as a war between a comic shop in Peterborough and a comic shop in Southampton isn't going to help anyone.
2 sides of the country, really.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's us. You can follow, if you don't already, listener, you can follow us on Twitter at IssuesPod, on Facebook. I'll put a link in the show notes to the Facebook page. We are on Tumblr. I've not really been posting on there. These episodes are going up on YouTube slowly, and they're also on SoundCloud. If you are listening to us on Stitcher or iTunes or anywhere like that, please do leave a review, or comment, or talk to us.
Or hate mail.
Hate mail's always good as well. You can email us at issuespod@gmail.com. I think that's the address. Have I been saying the name right, guys? I keep worrying that I'm saying it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing two.
You don't seem very involved there, Jon.
John's fine. He just knows it's nearly time to go. And I guess you guys, Jessie's on Instagram at
Deadpool's girl.
Yep. And Jon is on Twitter at
Jon Momb.
Yes. No H. He's one of those Johns. I think it's time to go. Thank you, listener. You've been great. Kehaar, thanks. You're awesome. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.